If everybody could take a seat, please. And 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Thanks, guys. I'm hogging all the front fun seats here. Let's do that. All right. Welcome to Austin Design, Action Design ATX, the meetup. My name is Robin Kriegelstein, the founder, and this is my obsession, figuring out why humans do crazy things and how we can design to help them do better, whether it's in products, programs, services, policy. There's a whole renaissance going on in the sciences and also just in our digital lives and the ability to do a lot of large-scale testing on how we can influence people and help people to make better decisions, which is really important because all of our major problems are around people doing dumb things, eating the wrong things. All the things that kill us are all behavioral these days. We eat too much, we drive too fast with our phones in our hands, we don't exercise, we vote for the wrong people. I'm not saying who that is. We don't take care of the environment, on and on. And even no matter what you're doing, you're designing something you're hoping people will use, and sadly, why people would use your thing and how they would use it and how the model you're using is probably wrong. All of ours is wrong as humans. It's more wrong than we realized, and there's a renaissance going on now in understanding that. And this whole field, whatever you call it, action design, behavioral design, and related fields like behavioral economics, behavioral science, and just design in general. We're pushing out the academic research and figuring out how do we design events, media, policy, all kinds of things to better get the outcomes that people are coming to us to get in the first place. So, Action Design is a meetup and actually a global or international network now, of which I'm an officer, that is in 13, 14, 15 cities in different places, focused on helping all of us share our knowledge, figure this stuff out together, spread the word. We have people from many different backgrounds, and here in Austin, we're one of the largest. And tonight, we have some of the longest practitioners in the area, so we're very honored to have them here. Susan Weinschenk and Guthrie Weinschenk, authors of a variety of books, are here to share their latest thinking and their top 5 insights from behavioral economics. So Susan is the author of 100 things you didn't know about. Designers need to know about people, and 100 more things designers need to know about people, and how to get people to do stuff, right? And Guthrie is the author of "I Love You, Read This Book." All right. First rule: human memory is not what we think it is. So Susan is a doctor of psychology who's been doing this for a very long time. She's been coming to Austin, speaking at South by since back when Austin was still Austin, or hasn't become the new Austin. And Guthrie's background is in behavioral economics and law. So 2 different fields that know a lot about getting people to do stuff or getting people to stop doing stuff. So we're very happy to have you here tonight. This event is also being live cast, so if anybody wishes they were here and would like to watch it, you can share the link. We'll be posting it to the forum for this particular event shortly when I sit down. But it will also be there afterwards so that people can watch it after the fact, or you can view that. They are also doing a workshop, a full workshop, in a couple days on Friday, which is close to being all sold out, but not quite yet. So you too can get in on this limited time edition opportunity if you'd like to. How can they find it again? If they Google.
If you search for Behavioral Design Workshop Austin.
Or just come talk to us.
Or just come talk.
Or just come talk to them. Yes.
Yeah. It's hosted by Rackspace, but it is open to the public. it's a
Yes.
wonder.
Yes. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about it. So, also, these events are sponsored by Capital Factory. As you can see, we've been here for like 8 years. They've been very generous with their space. It's an amazing everything, actually. They do a lot of stuff here. So if you're not familiar with what they offer, you should definitely come get the tour. They have an amazing number of meetups going on here, as well as places to work, and the mentoring system they have is also pretty incredible. Kinds of people you can get some time with, as well as all kinds of other things. It's also sponsored by our company, Live Neuron Labs, which is a behavioral consultancy in town. So we work on large-scale behavior change projects for social good, sustainability, exercise, health, education, stuff like that, as well as trainings. And the last thing is these events take quite a bit of effort to put together. So if anybody is interested in volunteering or speaking or sponsoring, just takes a few $100 for your company to get a lot of exposure to really cool, forward-thinking people, to get some food and drinks on the back table so that all of you wouldn't be so parched right now. That would be fantastic. And you can let us know by messaging us in any one of the places you find Action Design ATX. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Susan and Guthrie Weinschenk. Thank you.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
It's we're really enjoying being in Austin.
Yeah.
We had tacos at noon and traffic at 4. So
And
thanks.
but it's much warmer than Wisconsin, where I came down.
Yeah, and I'm in Chicago. All right, so we got a lot of fun stuff to talk to you guys about today. We have, I guess, our goal for this talk is we want to change the paradigm of how everyone thinks about decisions. Now, you guys probably are well along that route already. From
More than the average bear.
the people we've talked to, everyone here seems very smart. So that is great. But hopefully we have some fresh stuff that you have not been exposed to yet. So a lot of the things in this will are going to come in either my book or her book. This is, I love you. Now read this book. It's about decision making and behavioral economics, which Sean says not good enough for a door jam. So rousing review. That is not true, by the way, because it's way too long and very heavy.
It's
It
very
would make
big.
an
It
excellent
would make a good door
door
jam.
jam.
So I don't know what he's talking about.
All right, so let's
That's
just
not the only review.
no, that's not.
Please. Could
I
we
mean, it just came out. There's not that many reviews. Anyways, okay. So should we just dive right in?
dive right in.
All right. So the first thing I want to talk about is partitions and grouping. Has anyone here sort of know about partitions and grouping? Oh, okay. For the live stream, that was no hands. I don't believe you all, but that's okay. All right. So I want to tell you guys a story, and we'll put you. Imagine that you're sitting in a comfy couch, and I walk in and I cue on a beautiful, nice TV with good sound system and all that stuff, your favorite binge show of choice. So I don't know if it's the Great British Baking Show, or if it's a Netflix show, or just esports, or basketball, whatever it is. I just cue it up, and I walk up to you, and I put in your lap an enormous bag of whatever your guilty snack of choice is. So whether it's Terra chips, Doritos, kale somethings, like granola bars, whatever it is that you just love to nom on, I put an enormous bag, like this big, like in your lap, and I slowly sneak out of the room, and I'll be back in 4 hours, okay? And just let you go, okay? So imagine how much of the snack you consume. So let's instead I do the exact same thing. I put you in the comfy sofa, and I have the TV on, but this time I wheel up next to you a pallet of the snacks. Now, it's more than you could ever possibly eat. You can eat as much as you want. But each of the snacks are packaged in teensy tiny little bags. And so when you finish a bag, you just have to reach over and you grab another bag and you open it up. In which way do you think you'll eat more or less of the snack? And it's such a simple thing, and I'm sure everyone is assuming that it's the small bags because we've lived this. You think it's the big? Oh, which we more? Sorry. Yes. Which one do you think you'll eat less? Would be the small bags, and more would be the big bags. Yeah. And so it's such a simple experience. We've all experienced this, and it's not like reaching over and opening a bag of chips. Like this is not. It's about 5 seconds, and yet just that small decision point that you're forcing people into can radically change their behavior. Unconsciously, it doesn't take much to brain goes, I want chip, hand, mouth. Very simple. The act of, okay, I want chip. Should I get a bag? Should I open it? Am I eating too much? Am I hungry? All of a sudden, you're kicked into a different decision path. Is that accurate? Okay. So this is called partitioning, and it's a very, very simple way of we're dipping our toe into the water of behavioral economics and choice architecture just a little bit. And so it's a simple tool you can use to change behavior in an easy way. So encountering a partition increases the amount of attention you pay to it, gives you a decision point, like I already said. And there's some, we always love to cite our research. And in both of our books, but like in my book, at the end of every section, I have citations right there. So the effect of partitions on controlling consumption, what a great title, very straightforward. So the decision point shifts you from an automatic mode to a deliberative mode. That's the theory. I don't know if we know 100% sure exactly what's going on in the brain because we're still figuring things out. But that's sort of the best guess. All right. So the next thing is group framing, and this is sort of the next logical step of that. So with partitioning, that was a physical object, but you can do it with numerical objects as well. So you can make big numbers look small or small numbers look big. And there's a couple very, very simple examples. So, only 3 easy payments of 1995. Who here has ever bought anything from an infomercial? Okay, yeah, it took a couple seconds. And what was it?
I bought a screwdriver set that had no use.
A screwdriver set, he said.
That had no use to you?
It was an electronic thing, which I didn't have any use for it.
Oh, great.
He loved it. He had to have it.
Wonderful. So right, and we all understand the 3 easy payments because $20 it is not that much, but if it was actually 75, then we might not get it. And conversely, if you want to make a small number look large, the number of cigarettes smoked in a lifetime, right? So if you say, I only smoke half a pack a day, that doesn't sound like that much. But if you then walk someone into the room and show them the pile of 284,000 cigarettes such a smoker in a lifetime, you're like, what do you think the chances are that it'll increase your cancer risk? All of a sudden, that does make sense. So partitions can be very, very powerful, especially when combined with stories, which you talk a lot about in a lot of your research, your work. So takeaway 1A, and we're going to try and get through pretty fast so we have a nice Q&A at the end. So 1A, right? Use big groups and few partitions to keep people in an automatic habit decision-making mode and make small numbers feel big. And I'll just pause for a second. Okay. And of course, the inverse of that, 1B, use small groups and many partitions to encourage behavior change and make big, bad, scary numbers feel small. So it's a simple strategy to get people to change behavior by just changing the size of your offerings and the number of times that people have to make a step. Anything you want to add?
No, that's
cool.
good.
All right. So there is one more little caveat that I want to add, and this applies to all of it. I think sometimes it can be really easy to jump to conclusions that you just wave the magical potato chip strategy around, and all of a sudden all your problems will be solved. And a lot of times motivation is really complicated and nuanced, and there's multiple competing things going on. And it can be really hard to identify exactly why something is working or why something isn't working. And so a lot of what we'll talk about today may be the reason. It might be that simple, but if you try it and it doesn't work, there may be some other motivations going on that you're just not aware of. So, I think this is really cool. It's all backed by research. But the thing about behavioral economics is it's all about what's actually going on in the moment to that person. And so if you don't really understand that, you're probably going to miss the target, even if your research and data is correct. So if I have time and someone wants to ask, I can tell the parable of the opt-in versus opt-out organ donation studies. So that's fun. But I don't know if I have time, so I want to get through it. But at the end, if we do, you should ask, because it's a good story. All right, so that leads me into number 2, which is choice architecture. Who here has heard of the phrase choice architecture? We have a couple hands, though not a ton of hands. I don't know if you guys are just shy, or if you don't know, I'm not sure.
They think it's a trick question.
Might be a trick question.
It's not a trick question.
Okay, so choice architecture is just a way of thinking about things and thinking about choice and behavioral economics. And we should really say how we define some of this stuff. You wanna do that?
How we define choice architecture?
No, the behavioral science.
Oh, behavioral science and behavioral economics.
Yeah,
So I have a PhD in psychology, and so my work has always centered on what do we know about people? What do we know about how the brain works? That is fairly universal. So it doesn't matter who you are, it doesn't matter where you live, almost everyone sees these things the same way, has the same decision process, and so on. The universal things about what humans do. And so we call that the psychology part of the behavioral science work we do. And Guthrie has a degree in economics, so he's coming at this from the behavioral economics point of view, which we think is a little different, because he really focuses in on who is the particular person in a particular context, in a particular situation, interacting with particular other people, and how is that whole confluence of things going to affect their behavior. And so it's obviously related, but it's not exactly the same. So when we do work for clients and so on, we're looking at both of those things, right? We're combining what we know about psychology with what we know about behavioral economics, and altogether we just kind of call it behavioral science because we could probably come up with some cool acronym like
that's how we break
or
it down.
XI or I don't know.
Okay, so choice architecture is the structure that a person experiences when they make a decision. That's all it is. So if you think about, we think about design when we're making a design. We think about the decisions we make when we have a physical product. So, for example, the interface of an app. There's a design or information architecture is a term I'm sure many of you are familiar with. There is a body of knowledge and a whole kind of way of thinking about these problems. Choice architecture is really focusing in on there is a choice architecture whether or not you design it. There always is. And the question is, have you actually actively thought about what that is, what you're presenting? And as you always like to say, there's always an interface.
Yeah, there's always an interface.
Have
you intentionally designed it? There's always a choice architecture. Have you intentionally designed it?
All right. So this is a little small. I'm not sure if you guys can see, but I won't walk too far. But so this is just a screenshot of Subaru's website. And the question is, and I don't, if anyone can see, maybe those who are closer, what is the choice architecture of this page? And just for if it's a little hard to see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I count 9 cars. The Impreza, Legacy, Crosstrek, Forester, Outback, Ascent, and then BRZ, WRX, and the STI S209. Okay, so this little section, what's the choice architecture?
You mean, are you asking them what are they supposed to choose from?
Well,
or?
there is a choice architecture here and I'm not going to say that I am, I know exactly what it is, but I have an opinion. Does anyone else have an opinion? If you can see.
Would it be level of luxury? Like, they seem to go from lower end to higher end?
They do. They
She
do.
said level of luxury, lower end to higher end.
So the way this is designed is there are 9 options. Are there 9 choices? That's the question. Now, that interface says there's 9 choices. I would say, if you're looking at it from a choice architecture perspective, there are 3 choices. So, most people are not going to experience the 9 separate choices. When you get to this, if you just open this up, you're not going to look at each car. You're searching for something. You're looking for something. So what people are probably going to do, and this is how I would break it down, period 0, because I'm an economist and we start in period 0, that's when you start. Period 1, there are 3 choices there. There's, if we go back, there's the sedan, which happens to be the cheaper one, but not which is the Impreza, the Legacy. There's the sort of SUV wagons that they sell, the Outback that everyone knows, the Forester, the Crosstrek, the Ascent. And then there's the weird luxury BRZ STI racing car something that they do. So what I would say is actually the choice architecture of this site is that there are 3 choices. So what is it that you're searching to buy? Which one of these 3? Yeah, right. So it's just a different way of looking at what the user is actually going to experience and the choices they're going to be running into that is perhaps separate from the setup. So, and oftentimes separate from the way the business is set up. Who here works at a company that has silos? That's a pretty siloed company. Oh, I'm getting a lot of nervous laughter. We all know the struggles of silos in business units. And the reality is a lot of times when you come to the final product, whatever the silos are, those are the choices that are put in the product. So let me give you another example. And I already walked through this. Okay, the internet provider. So this is a simpler example that I just mocked up. And it's a little hard to read on that screen, but a little easier over here. So this is the internet provider super awesome website. And so they say it's a very, very simple website.
Reminiscent of the 1980s.
Yeah, so select one of our great plans. So we have the 25 megabyte per second for $50 a month, the 100 and the 300. Okay, that's fairly reasonable. We also have the up in the corner, we have click here for business speed and service. So, any guesses at what the choice architecture looks like here?
100 megabytes per second. You're trying to focus you on that one?
Sure. Yes, that's
He
certainly
said trying to focus in on the 100 megabytes per second.
Right. So within this, we have different strategies because we're trying to maybe push different products. Anything else? Yeah. Yeah.
Home versus business.
Right? So when you break it down in this simplicity, then it's easy to see. When you're looking at like a real website, there's a lot going on. But when it's broken down like this, right? And I should have said when you clicked on the click here for business speed and service, this is the page. Our business plan is great. Call for pricing, which is normally what you see when it comes to the business service side, right? So that's what it is. So in this simple example, here's what I would say the choice architecture is. So period 0, again, we're going to start. And period 1, there are 2 choices. Are you a business customer or are you a consumer customer? And so when you get to the website, if you're a business, like I'm here for business service, you're not gonna look at all the options for consumer service because that's not you. The first choice you make is, I need to go to the business section, or vice versa. If you decide to do the business customer, now this is actually from my perspective, I'm the owner of the business and I'm designing this choice architecture. I've designed this If you're a business customer, top of the line, we are charging you money, call for pricing, we know what's going on. If you're a consumer customer, all right, we have our cheap plan if you're really cheap. We have our best value you identified. And I've starred that because that's really where we want to funnel people. That's where we think we have the best combination of service and we can make good money on this. And this is where we want to direct most people. But hey, if you really want to spend a lot, we have this expensive decoy, which is in my book, which I do not have time to talk about. Decoys do work to kind of get people into sort of where you want the flow. So this is just a way of just transforming how you're designing stuff in a different way. Is that good?
Yeah, I think it's a way of. I think sometimes we get caught up in the details of the design of whatever it is, whether it's a service or a product or a website, and we almost get distracted by all the details, and then we have all these silos telling us what's important, and then we forget to look at this from a different level, stepping back and saying, wait a minute, what's really here, and how will the person who's interacting with this service or product or design, how are they really seeing it? And is there a mismatch between the way they're seeing it and the way we're presenting it? Is there something we could do on the, our design side to better fit their mental model? Or conversely, is there something that we should totally design differently based on what we think their true mental model is?
Has anyone here ever worked for a company that released a product and their customers started using it in a way they didn't expect? Right? So my favorite, it's really not a favorite example. An example, I guess I enjoy it, but it's not cool, is our immigration system. So it was designed to work a certain way, and then at the very last resort, you have these exemptions for, extreme hardship. But because there's such a backlog, the only way you can get stuff through is through this other door, which is the hardship rule. So all of a sudden now everything is flowing through that, and it was never designed to do that. And I'm sure that's kind of a strange example, but I went to law school. I don't know what to tell you. I studied immigration law. But in the same way, a lot of you might design something, and then people all of a sudden are using it in ways you don't expect. And it's because the choices they're looking at, of course, are not the choices that the way you designed it, because it's just different. So again, when you think like a behavioral economist, you're thinking from a human's point of view. That's how I like to think about it. I know economics can be called the dismal science, but I don't know, maybe humans are dismal, I'm not sure. Okay, so takeaway number 2, there's always a choice architecture. Have you purposely designed yours? You can achieve better outcomes by thinking like a behavioral economist. That's what I like to think. That's what I would hope. And I'll leave that on just for a second. Let you snap your pictures. So now,
I get to talk.
Yes.
Oh, I get the.
Ooh.
I get the.
Yeah. Do you want to stand on this side?
Oh, okay.
Oh, whatever.
All right. So I'm going to do number 3, and I'm going to talk about dopamine loops and designed habits.
Again, has anyone here heard of a dopamine loop?
Yeah. See, yeah. My stuff's more popular than yours.
No, it's totally true. Her stuff's way more popular. Okay, I'll just say, so briefly, I wrote this book because there's a lot of really great, there's a lot of great research about psychology.
Of course.
And you've written a popular
I've
book
written
about it.
2.
And so people sort of have an idea. There's just as much, or maybe slightly less, but there's a lot of really great research about behavioral economics. And it's all
Nobody knows about it.
No one
Yeah.
knows about it.
Secret.
And so my goal of this book, because the thing is, if I wrote a book and it was like a big textbook and it said like behavioral economics research summaries, no one is ever going to read it. And it's so dense and it's really hard to understand. And so the whole point of my book was to make it to try and make it entertaining and easy to read. I'm not sure I achieved it, but I really did try.
So you're hoping my stuff, yeah, well.
People love that stuff.
Of course.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, so I want to talk about habits. I want to talk about dopamine and how that, and also I want to talk about decision making, because Guthrie said he wants to change the paradigm of how you think about decisions. So first thing I want to just talk about is, what we and other people call the swipe habit. And it's such an interesting thing, right? I mean, it wasn't that many years ago that there was no such thing as swiping on a screen. I mean, you could do it, but nothing would happen, right? I mean, you could do it on a TV or a monitor. I mean, what the heck? You could do it on your laptop. I mean, you know, it wouldn't do anything. Now, of course, it does. In fact, now we try and swipe things that don't swipe, and we're like, what the heck? What kind of machine is this, right? And I was even thinking about this actually this morning. You know, you wake up in the morning, I haven't quite had the coffee yet, I'm not really fully awake, but I'm already with the phone, you know. And it dawned on me that I had just, in a series of a few seconds, swiped swiped left, swiped right, swiped up, swiped down. You know, I was like this, right? Without even having to think too much because I hadn't had my coffee, you know, and I was like, whoa. So that's what happens is we're going to talk in this section about conditioned responses, because really that's what this is and why it's so ubiquitous and why it's been so easy for us to learn. Because when, you know, think about it, you know, it's natural for us to walk. It's natural for us to pick something up, you know, with our opposable thumbs. You're not born doing the thing with your finger, with the swiping. And yet it was so easy for us to do it, we don't even think about it anymore. And that's the example of a conditioned response, and that's what habit is. So there are certain situations where it's really easy for us to learn how to do these conditioned responses. One of the things that makes it easy is it's a small motor movement. When you have a small motor movement, it makes it easier to become a habit. But the other thing we have going on with the swipe habit has to do with dopamine. So let's talk about dopamine for a second. Dopamine is, and I may not have these slides in the right order. It's now occurring to me.
It's fine.
Dopamine is a brain chemical. It's released in your brain. Actually, it goes throughout your body. It does all kinds of things. It's important with sleep and so on. But there's some particular aspects of it that I'm interested in as a psychologist and as a behavioral designer. And that has to do with motivation and attention and anticipation. You know, it's interesting, a lot of people think that dopamine is the reward chemical, that when something pleasurable happens, you know, you eat a nice piece of cake, or you have sex or something, you know, dopamine is released. But it's actually more nuanced than that. So dopamine is released in really two main ways. One is when you are anticipating a reward. I'll show you the research on that in a second. And the other is when you get some information that releases dopamine, and the dopamine makes you want to take action. It makes you want to go get more information. I mean, how many times have you gone online to look something particular up? Like, where is that action design meeting? And then a half an hour later, you're buying a shirt, right? And it's like, how did, what? I just can't, what? Right? So, but what happens is, right, and a lot of these apps are, whether they did it on purpose or not, I don't know. But for instance, Instagram, right, or something where you swipe and then there's something and then you swipe and then there's more. Every time you swipe, that's more information, and then that's going to trigger dopamine. And then, of course, what are you going to do? Swipe again, and then that's going to trigger more dopamine. And what are you going to do? Swipe again, right? I have this series of apps on my homepage. It's like my morning feed, you know, and I go from, you know, this to this, and then I'm all done, and it's like, oh, I got to really get up now, you know.
So yeah, so dopamine, seeking.
Seeking. It's all about, it's seeking behavior. It causes you to seek and be motivated to seek. Oh yeah, I did have it in the right order.
Yeah, you know what you're doing.
Amazing. Okay. So this is a graph that I think I actually drew from, and as you can see, I'm not a visual designer. Okay, I mean, this was like hand-drawn, I believe. Not bad. So this is from Robert Sapolsky. How many of you know Robert Sapolsky? Anybody know his work? He's an anthropologist. He's a really an amazing guy. And this was, he did this to talk about this whole dopamine idea. Some research he did this research with rats, not humans. So he would give them a signal, which was a light. They'd be in the cage, the light would come on, and he would train them that if when the light comes on, if you run over and press a bar, which he called work, that's the work, then you'll get a reward, which is a really yummy little rat pellet that we wouldn't like. Okay, rat food pellet, not made out of rats, a rat food pellet. Okay, so the light comes on, he runs over, presses the bar, he gets a reward. Now what he did was he measured the dopamine release. And what he found was the light comes on, and what happens to the dopamine? It gets released right away. The dopamine is not released by getting the reward. By the time the reward comes, the dopamine is gone. So this idea that, oh yeah, dopamine is released when you get a reward, no. It's released in anticipation of the reward. It's anticipation that you're going to get a reward, then the dopamine is released. Now this is interesting too. That first instance was every time the light came on and the rat ran over and pressed the bar, he got the dopamine. Here's a case, the yellow, the light comes on, the rat runs over and presses the bar, but he only gets the reward half of the time. Not every time, only half of the time, randomly. Sometimes he gets the reward, sometimes he doesn't. It averages out to 50%. More dopamine released, not less, more. He didn't even get the reward, and the dopamine is higher. Why is this? Why would you have more dopamine released when you're only getting a reward half the time? Any ideas? Pardon? It's like gambling. So the excitement, it increases the anticipation. I might get it, I might not. I got to go for it. I got to take action, right? And then interestingly, the middle bar, the red bar, is when the reward comes 25% of the time or 75% of the time. The same amount of dopamine is released when you get the reward a quarter of the time versus 3/4. Why is that? What's that about? Why does that result in the same amount? You'd think, it would be like 150, 125, 50, 75, but it's not. Why are 25 and 75 the same amount of dopamine? Any ideas?
Brain doesn't know how to do math.
The brain doesn't know how to do math. No, it's because it's the same amount of predictability, right? I mean, it's one way or the other. It's like, well, pretty sure I'm not going to get it. That's if it's a 25. Every now and then I do, but usually I don't. Or I'm pretty sure I'm going to get it. Every now and then I don't, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to, right? 50% is like the least predictable, right? 100% is very predictable. 25 and 75 kind of in between. So I find Sapolsky's work really interesting. Plus, I did all that research with rats back in grad school, so I always get excited about the rat studies. Yeah,
It's a true story.
All right. So that's Robert Sapolsky, dopamine's release in anticipation of reward. I was thinking about this also. I don't know if some of the companies are doing this on purpose or not. When online shopping, I say these things and I feel like I date myself. Like not in go on a date, but in, I remember when online shopping first became a big thing, right?
Telegram.
What?
I was just saying old things. I just
Yeah.
said telegram, photograph.
Yeah. And I remember, I was like, it's going to be a big thing. This is going to be big. And I bought the Amazon IPO. And then one of the biggest mistakes I ever made in my whole life, I let a broker talk me into selling. Don't be greedy, she said. Take the money now. And I had that intuition going, no, it's going to be big. Hold on. And I didn't. I sold it. And hence, we are here.
Yeah.
We did not get the house in the Cayman Islands,
Nope.
did we? No,
Nope.
okay. But I thought online shopping would be really big, and other people were saying, no, how can it be big? It's so easy. People go to the store, they get the reward right away. They get the product. And I said, exactly. That's why online shopping is going to work, because they have to wait. And it's like, that's not a good thing. I said, oh, yes, it is. It builds anticipation. And now, if you've noticed, what happens is you order something, you get a message, thank you for your order. Oh, they know it's there.
Your
It's
order
there.
has shipped.
Then your order has shipped. Oh my God, the order is shipped. And now your order is scheduled for delivery. And then I love it where you can see where the little truck is.
Yes.
He's coming.
7 stops
He's
away.
coming. He's coming towards me. You know, especially excited when you live in rural Wisconsin, as I do. The truck is coming. But all of that builds anticipation. I think they're doing it because they think it's good customer experience or people seem to like it. I don't know that all these companies realize that every time they do that, they are reminding me that this thing is coming and I'm getting a dopamine hit. I'm getting information, which gives me a dopamine hit, and I'm getting more anticipation. All right. So takeaway number 3. People are easily programmed to conditioned responses. This swiping, this reaction we have, this dopamine hit, this more information, those are all conditioned responses. If you've studied any Pavlov in your intro psych class in college, it's all based on that.
Yeah. And that could be a whole talk.
Yeah.
But you only get one section
I only
about
get-
dopamine. Sorry.
Yeah, okay.
Moving on. Okay, so now for something very different. Self-regulatory fit and orientation. This is based on some really cool research, and I think it explains a lot. I don't have the scientific proof to say that it explains everything that's wrong with society, but I have a hunch that it explains a lot of it. So we'll see what you guys think. All right, so I want to tell you another story. Has anyone here ever been to Sweden? Yeah, that is a shockingly large number.
That's one of our favorite places.
Wow. Okay, so we've had the great fortune of working in Sweden for a while and got to spend a significant amount of time there. All right, so I want to tell 2 stories. The first story is, let's say that we're going to go from where I live in Chicago, and we're going to use Houston. So there are 2 people that are going on the exact same trip. They take the exact same route. And just for the sake, let's just say they take the exact same amount of time, okay? In the first is an HVAC team on a work trip. So they work for, Acme HVAC Services, and they have a big important client in Chicago. Oh my God, and they're having HVAC trouble. And so they need to get up there, fix the problem, so everything is good. All right, and we have the same, so that's the trip they're taking up, and then maybe they'll take the trip back. Kind of doesn't matter. The next group is we have a Swedish couple on honeymoon. They've heard great things about Texas and America and the wide open spaces and all the ruckus we get into, and so they've decided for their honeymoon they're going to take this trip across the United States from Austin. And maybe I said Houston, doesn't really matter, up to Chicago.
Oh, it matters to the people in this room.
Would you prefer that they flew into Austin or Houston?
Austin.
Austin, okay.
He lived in Houston. He knows that
I
Austin
did
is
live
not
I did
Houston.
live in Houston. Anyways, so if you left in Houston, you'd probably stop in Austin. So this is the same trip. But the orientation of these 2 people, of these 2 groups, are different. The HVAC has what I would call, the preventing loss orientation, prevention orientation. And the Swedish couple, they're in a maximizing gain orientation or promotion orientation. So so exactly what does this mean? People orient themselves when they solve a problem as either prevention, which minimizes losses, or promotion, which maximizes gains. And that's from bringing the frame into focus, which is the study this stuff comes from. So messages that are oriented in the same direction that person is facing is going to be a lot stronger. So let's get back to our two little fun groups here. So the HVAC people, they don't want anything to go wrong. They just want to get to the site and fix it for the client. They don't want any detours. They don't want any unexpected shenanigans. They're trying to minimize losses as much as possible. The couple is maximizing gains. We're here to have a good time. Like, we just want to, maybe we'll stop at a fun, diner somewhere and experience something. Like, they are open to what happens. So they are in a maximizing gain orientation. Okay, so now that I've sort of set that, again, messages that are oriented in the same direction a person is facing is going to be a lot stronger. So this is actually from the study itself. So you have, what they did was they showed, they were able to put people into either a prevention focus or a promotion focus. So again, prevention is don't let anything bad happen. Promotion, look at all this good that you'll get if you do X or Y. And then they expose them to advertising messages. And so the gain frame is, hey, get our product. All this good stuff will happen. And the loss frame was, get our product. We'll prevent all the bad things. And as you could see, which is not exactly a surprise because I'm talking about it, people in the promotion orientation where the gain frame messages were much more effective than people who were exposed to the loss frame, and people in the prevention frame, responded better to the loss frame. So, can anyone think of some other examples of gain frame and loss frame? Investing, yes, that's a good one. That's a good one, right? So I have my little acorns. I want to put them very safely. Don't want anything to happen, so we're going to do things very safe. I'm a broker. We're here so that you have, safe, blah, blah. Or, venture capital, we're 10x, 100x, like, let's roll. This is one that I really, really like. So we have the prevention loss frame. This is the Trump quote, Democrats want to destroy you and they want to destroy our country as we know it. And then we have the promotion gain, hope and change. And so, both of these messages were really, really effective to people who were oriented in that direction. So when we talk about immigration, especially immigration is a good one. People who are conservative generally take a prevention focus when it comes to immigration. They don't want they want to protect against terrorist threats. They want to preserve jobs. They don't want to have strains on the social safety net. People who are more liberal tend to take the promotion orientation of immigration. Think of all the startups that happen because of all the entrepreneurial spirit of people who immigrate and more diversity of cultures, all the benefits that'll come to society. So the theory is then that ties this all together is when things are familiar, they're processed faster, which makes them feel better and more correct. So let's say you are in the prevention orientation and you're being exposed to a message that is promotion or in a message that's prevention. The prevention message, you don't have to, if you think, for example, that immigration is bad and that it's causing harm, and someone says immigration is bad, it's causing harm, your brain will process that a little bit faster. And so it feels right. And so a lot of this is all about feel. But if you're exposed to a message that says, actually, here's a bunch of research about why immigration is actually, for the overall economy, is a little bit better, even though perhaps is worse for some small subsets of especially uneducated men, which is, that's what the economic studies say. It takes a little longer because your focus, your frame, your orientation is not oriented in that direction. And so for you to get there, your brain has to go, well, that's not what I think, and the process. And so it takes a little longer, and so it doesn't feel correct. So this is, again, this is why I like to really tie this whole thing together. This is why we have the Twitter bubbles that we have, the spheres. Because things that are, if you're in a certain orientation and you're exposed to a message in that orientation, you process it just that much faster, and so it feels correct. And that feels good. And if it's not in your orientation, it doesn't feel as good, and so you don't like to be exposed to it as much. So this is my large grand theory about that. So again, I could give a whole talk. I think it's really, really cool stuff. If you have a chance to read the research paper, I encourage you to do that. So the other thing, if you want to be successful, it's best to use a message that's framed in the correct orientation of your target audience. And furthermore, if you face competition where everyone is in the same direction, be the loudest voice. So this is where I like to get back to Obama and Trump. When Trump ran for office, the Republican Party is at a prevention, let's just assume they're all at a prevention orientation, and he's on stage with the 16 candidates, and they're all giving a prevention message. But his prevention message was much louder than his competition. And so it sounded better, and he wins the nomination. The exact same thing, actually, in my opinion, happened with Obama against Hillary Clinton in the 2008 primary. Clinton had it was a promotion message, but it was soft. And Obama had the promotion message, but it was much, much stronger than things will be a little bit better, a little slowly. His was, hope and change, we're all going to rally, this very, very, very strong promotion message, and he wins the nomination. So this is my grand theory. Does that make any sense to anyone? I hope so.
Yeah, and I just want to add to it that there is a part of the brain that keeps track of how long it is taking you to process information. And it's monitoring the time. And when it takes more time rather than less time, your brain just kind of says, it's taking a lot of time. So we must not like this must not be right, we must not be ready to make a decision, and it's just based on time. So that, I think that ties into this one.
Okay. So yeah, I find that super fascinating. Just very cool stuff.
All right, this is our last one, because we have 5.
And then we'll do Q&A.
And then we'll do Q&A, so think about what you might want to ask. So this has to do with
Short one.
culture and individualism. So, in psychology, behavioral science, this discussion about nature versus nurture is so old. It's been going on for so long. I don't think we even talk about it very much anymore. It's like, it's some of both, whatever. But it's actually, what does the research say? So do we do the things we do because that's just how humans are? Or do we do the things we do because of the culture that we live in? And is one stronger than the other? And does it depend on what you're talking about? So that's the nature versus nurture. So there's data from a study, the Global Preference Survey.
Yeah, and it's hard. There's not a lot of research on this because it requires a
lot of work.
And these guys, they really
covered
did it.
76 countries, 90% of the world's population, and 90% of global income were part of the
survey.
Part of the data set. They didn't interview 90% of the people on the planet, but were part of the data set. All right. So you can imagine, we've probably most of us have had a different life than an 80-year-old grandmother in Ghana. So how different would that make some of the way we behave and the way we are? And here's what they found. The differences between people in a specific country, so, take Sweden. The differences between people in Sweden are 10 times the differences between someone from Sweden and someone from China or somewhere else. I really like this, which so hard to read on the screens, but let's try. If you go across in a row, let's look at risk taking. So if we measure how people have a tendency to be risk takers or not risk takers.
And some people are in a population in the United States are going to take more risks than they're more
in general.
They're
right.
More risky.
So risk taking, if you take 9 plus 91 equals 100. So each row adds up to 100. So the question is, the differences among people in the aspect of how much risk they're willing to take, how much of those differences have to do with the between country variation versus the within country variation. And in that particular one, 9% of the variation between people has to do with the fact that they're from Sweden versus the UK versus China. 91% of that variable has to do with is variation within the country, which means that most, especially on that one, most of the variability is not because of culture. It's not because someone was raised in Sweden, someone was raised in Japan, the people in Sweden have more or less risk-taking than the people in Japan. No, almost all the variation is because you take risks, I don't take risks. It's individual variation.
Yeah. And it is, we are more alike than we are different, which I don't know. I think it's really fascinating. These were the 7 attributes that they did in the study, by the way.
Yeah.
Patience, risk-taking, positive reciprocity, negative reciprocity, altruism, and trust.
So I don't want to imply that the culture doesn't have any impact, because it does. But when I was writing 100 things every designer needs to know about people, and even 100 more things, so there were 200 things, and a very few of them were based on culture.
There are a couple.
There are a couple, but most of them were not. All right, so takeaway number 5, regions around the world differ from each other, but their differences are only 10% of the differences that individual people have. All right, Guthrie.
Yeah.
You want to take us out?
Yeah.
And then we'll see if anyone has any questions.
Yeah. We have a bonus little section. We have a design model. It's not, lots of people have a design model. We came up with ours. If you want to know a little bit more about it, we can. She told me to come up with a formula.
He likes formula. He's an economist.
So for how can we measure the quality of a behavioral design? So I did.
I'll run through it really, really fast. The quality of a particular behavioral design is a function of how much you know about people, that's KH, how much you know about the situation, and then the process that you're following.
Yeah. And, we have...
It has lots of steps, and we can, if you want to know more, we can tell you more.
Free stuff for
free
you
stuff.
guys.
We like free
we
stuff.
We have a podcast. It's free. It's not even ads. We just do it for fun. So that's called Human Tech.
Yep.
And we have a bunch of free courses at courses.tuba.com that you guys are more than happy to subscribe. The behavioral econ stuff, some of it's in some of the courses, but we'll have a full certificate coming soon.
It's in the works.
Yeah. I just released this book like a month ago, maybe. So, all right. Q&A. Yes. You.
So this is talking. Thank you. This is a question around the prevention versus promotion state. So I'm working on some research for an application. I work at Dell. And I'm trying to understand some of the factors around the people I'm working with. And so my question is around when you're trying to assess whether your target audience is a prevention or promotion state, what kind of factors do you look at to help determine that?
I think you could tease it out. I'd have to look at exactly how they did it in the study, because I think they've probably given it more thought than I have. But I would imagine, what do you think about the new version of the software? And so if they say, the old version, oh, it's so slow, I'm really excited for the new features, might be a clue that what state they're in. Or if they're like, I can't believe they're making a switch. I don't want to learn something new. This works fine. It's going to break up my workflow. Probably a clue that they're in prevention focus.
Yeah, so what we usually do, it's, the tried and true interview, right? And then we analyze what we're hearing. So I don't think it's anything particularly fancy that we're doing.
Yeah, and I don't think there's anything, I wish I could tell you something super specific, but it probably very, very much depends on the...
Like a sentiment analysis strategy or something.
Yeah.
I just said that you do like a sentiment analysis strategy and then take those data points and try to group them or something.
Yeah, and then what we would do is we would prototype a message, right? It's like, okay, we think they're mainly in, or these people over here are mainly in prevention and these are in promotion. So let's try a messaging one way or another, and then we'll test it out.
So a lot of times, for example, if you're rolling out new software, you roll out one message, and there's going to be, the people who are excited, and then the grumpy people who don't want to switch. But so really you have two different populations, and what might be most effective is have a prevention. If you can identify who's in the prevention and who's in the promotion, send the promotion people.
Give a
like,
different
we got new
messaging.
software. It's great. You're gonna love it. But if the prevention people get it's great. You're gonna love it. They're not going to like that at all.
So you may need too
This
much.
is a conversation about Cambridge Analytica, trying to identify which message to send.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's-
Yeah.
that's true.
Because it's probably going to be much more effective.
There's a Higgins regulatory focus questionnaire. Seems to be the standard. Regulatory
I believe you.
questionnaire
Oh, here.
will be what they've used.
Yeah. I do not know about that.
I'll post it on the meetup forum for this event. But yes, the Higgins Regulatory Focus Questionnaire is one of the ones used in studies.
That's awesome.
I also, excuse me, I also have a question around orientation. I spent some time in a job doing research on how media influences people and trying to advise productions and filmmakers how to tell the story to influence people. And one of the examples that we used to use was Al Gore's movie and how telling people not to buy big trucks affected because that was not their orientation. Could you provide an example of how do you frame that around the orientation of the people? Like, if I don't want to damage the environment, you tell me not to buy trucks, but I love trucks, or I don't know.
Yeah. So I would advise you two things. She wrote a book called How to Get People to Do Stuff, and there's 7 drivers of motivation. Not to say one is better than the other, but that's sort of 7 different strategies you can kind of use. Getting people to change behavior is the hardest thing you can do. It's so hard. And
Well, I think this is part of that nuanced thing that you mentioned. So, I kind of break the whole world of behavior change and how to get people to do stuff into these 7 drivers. And definitely it depends on the person and the situation and the context, but there are some that are stronger than others. So you mentioned stories, right? Because you were trying to get them to do stories. So what a really important thing is the self-story that the person has. And if you can ascertain what are the underlying self-stories that are driving their behavior, and then you can either message to one of those self-stories, or you can actually change the self-story. Amazingly, it's easier to change a self-story than most of us think. And if you're interested in that, there's a wonderful book called Redirect by Timothy Wilson. We interviewed him on one of our podcast episodes, and it's about the research on how to get people to change their self-stories. So there are some motivators that are stronger than others or stronger in a particular situation. So that's where I think the nuance really comes in.
And I'll give you one very quick example. One of the reasons I think that Tesla was so successful, especially with their early cars, was their message wasn't buy a fuel-efficient car. It's like, we have the fastest sports car you can buy. And so if your mental model is, I don't care about the environment, I just want a super fast sports car, you can be like, oh, I can get behind an electric car. It's cool that it's green, but it goes really fast, and that's what's important. So sort of kind of changing things can be effective.
So with the prevention promotion thing, are there any other ways is there a way you could craft like a unified message that sort of would appeal to both
Sure,
groups?
you could try.
Has it been effective? Has it been
Yes, unified messages that work really good. Toy Story would be the movie that's for the kids but also for the adults. So you kind of sneaking both ways. There are probably a couple other good examples. Do you know about progressive disclosure? Progressive disclosure is a strategy that basically you have people sort of pick their own path. And so if they want to know more about something, you give them just a little. And if they want to know more, then it expands and you can sort of check it out. So if you could get them to self-select, would be really great. We had a client who was trying to, who was working on a similar problem where they were trying to figure out what message to display. And it was sort of like, what do you think about gun control? And then, and then depending on which one they took, then you could, okay, we're going to give them this message or that message. So it's possible to do it all in one, but probably difficult.
Just for fun, what would a unified presidential message look like?
Probably, it would probably not, if you want the real answer, probably not be on normal partisan axes. Probably be a different political axis altogether. We had more questions. I know we had questions. Yes.
All right. So thank you so much for explaining a lot of this really interesting stuff. But one question I had relates to some of the context piece of this, so specifically environments. I know just talking about, framing and partitions and kind of intuitively guiding people through space, through wayfinding, stuff like that. But I'm curious more about the dopamine and the online shopping and how some of that stuff plays with physical space and context, and if you have additional resources or thoughts on that particular one.
So physical space is probably an area that's not researched enough, and a lot of the research is digital spaces. The only thing, do you know about the doorway research? Do you know this off the top of your head? The doors?
Yeah, but that, which is perhaps a little off topic, but there's this interesting research that when you go through a doorway, it triggers forgetting. And it doesn't matter what size the door is. It doesn't matter how big the room is. It actually works in physical space as well as digital space. Your little character goes through the door. We've all had the experience of going into the next room and then it's like, why did I come in here? Yeah, and you have to go back. So we know that there's that. But I'm also thinking about the work I did with the museum directors who are, this was a group of museum directors in Europe and the US, and I spoke at one of their, I gave a workshop at one of their conferences. Interesting group, extremely resistant to changing anything in their museums. But we were talking actually kind of about dopamine because, there's, they did not want to hear this, but museums can be exhausting, right? And it's partially because part of it is the dopamine. Like you go and you look at this, dopamine hit, information. And then I move to the next one, more dopamine. And it's not just physical exhaustion, but it's like this mental, I have been seeking and searching for an hour and it feels like 2 days, And so I think this idea of dopamine and physical spaces is and then combined with the doorway, I think it's really fascinating. But there almost seems to be this split between, there's the people who are trying to design for digital, the people who are trying to design for behavior service change, and then the people who are designing for physical space. And I don't know that they always talk to each other. Yeah.
So going to the prevention promotion, do you find that most people tend to either be on one side or does it matter in terms of a context?
It would definitely matters in different contexts. So for example, when it comes to insurance, I'm probably very prevention. When it comes to tacos, I'm very promotion. So, so I can, you can be, it very much depends on and it would depend on my mood. If I'm really hungry, and I'm looking to get food, I just want to get my favorite thing that I know I'm going to like, and it's going to be great because I've had a long day and I just want what I want. If I'm in a new city, I'm going to be more promotion, and I want to go try a fun new restaurant, and maybe it's not going to be very good. I don't know. So yeah, it definitely totally depends on context.
So I just have a couple things to add to your comments about the doorway thought. The term that I see used is liminal or liminality. And so if you're trying to understand more about that doorway effect, that's a term that you want to go search for. The other thing on swiping. So I remember when iPads first appeared, and YouTube suddenly had videos of babies sitting down reading books on the iPad and really frustrated that they couldn't swipe the page. And I think that's the first time I ever saw that behavior.
Yeah, Guthrie and I give a whole talk on generational differences with technology. So that's going to be interesting when those little people are running the world. All right, I think we're probably out of time. I want to thank you guys for being here, and we're here. If you have some more questions, come talk to us.
Yeah, we're not in a rush, so come up, say hi, ask more questions. But we'll let. Oh, yeah. I said I was going to talk about it very quickly. If you guys want to leave, go ahead. I'm sorry. You brought it up. You brought it up. Who here has heard about the organ donation study where if you make it like opt-in versus opt-out, all of a sudden the organ donation rates go up? Okay. So that's like the sort of behavioral economics. You stand up here and you say that you like sprinkle the magical behavioral economics dust on it, and all of a sudden all your problems are fixed, opt-in, opt-out. If you dig in a little deeper in those studies, which I have, what's really interesting is, yes, for some organs, overall the rates go up, but it depends. So for organs that you don't have a say in, like your heart, because you don't get to donate your heart willingly, unfortunately, those did go up because now everyone's signed up into the program. But donations of voluntary donations of organs in those countries went down. So stuff like kidneys, where you have two, they went down because, we don't, there's not that drive because it's opt-in. So just because it looks good on paper, there might be weird ripple effects or externalities that you're not aware of. So that's why it can be so hard and so nuanced and complex. So that's a little short story. So okay. Now you can really leave.
Robin, go ahead.
Yeah. We have 15 more minutes of gripping conversation or questions in the room. We have Alan, you're still around for a little while? So Alan's a behavior designer, Sparky's here, these guys are here, I'm here, but also you guys are, and certainly I will be hanging out once we get kicked out of this room in 15 minutes, 14 minutes now. There's a bar downstairs where the conversation can continue as well, if anybody would like to join us there. So thank you very much for coming. Please tweet, share, invite friends, bring someone next time. Yes, these guys, I did end up finding the link to their workshop on Friday, which is also posted. Does everyone know what I mean when I'm saying in this event, there's a area for comments below? Yeah, so that's linked there now. So fill it up before everybody else gets to it. And yeah, thanks for coming. Thank you.
Thank you very much. No, I wanted to